and this is our plan of attack.
Banks have become an essential threat to our democracy. So consider this justice.
Thank you for listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported radio station on the internet. Please help support this station so this battle can continue forward. Revolution Radio! Thank you for listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. Any commercial advertising you may hear in this program is of the sole discretion and benefit of the host of whose program you are listening to. Revolution Radio does not endorse any commercial products, nor does it accept monetary compensation for on-air advertising of commercial products, nor will it ever. We are and shall remain 100% listener supported. Any product advertising on this program are considered used at higher risk, and Revolution Radio shall not be held liable for any claims or damages received from any product advertised within this program. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps. The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Do you feel as if you don't belong? Do you know you were meant for something more? Well, you were. Knowledge of who you are and where you really are from is within your reach. Join Janet Carol Lessin and Dr. Sasha Lessin as they search for the answers as they open up the Stargate to the cosmos.
Aloha, everybody, and welcome to Stargate to the Cosmos. And I'm your host, Janet Carol Lessin, with my co-host, Dr. Sasha Lessin, and our producer, Thomas Becker. And today we are reunited with John Titor II, John Titor II. And John has been on our show many times, and I was just looking in my database. We haven't had John on since January. Oh my God, it's coming up on a year. So we're going to be reuniting with John and catching up with him and seeing what's been going on. And before we pull on, John, we're going to do a little sound check here. Dr. Sasha Lessin, my beloved, are you there? Hello, Sasha. Sasha, unmute.
Okay, yeah,
okay. There you are.
I am on. Okay, and we're really excited to have you here. John, we've been talking to Penny Bradley, and she's been telling us about how there's time police who are trying to stop the bad guys from capturing the time frame. And she just described your job and the what you did. And I see you as part of the reason why China exists today. And I think it's such a great story, and I'm really eager to rap with you some more.
Yeah, hi, John. We'd like you to catch us up on what's been going on with your life. And I know you have a blog and you've got a lot of interesting articles like cyborgs are a threat to mankind. So we'll go over wherever you want to go, but there's some of these blog entries I'd like to discuss as well. So welcome to the show today, John. Welcome back.
Well, great to be on with you guys.
Yeah, we missed you.
I guess that I can tell you what I've been up to lately. I've been trying to organize some of my artifacts that I've collected, and there's some donations I'm going to be making to museums. And one museum that I plan to donate to is out at Edwards Air Force Base. And I went to the museum there, and I really had a good time with the director of the museum. And then I got to meet this lieutenant colonel that is in charge of testing the F-35 for the Air Force. And so he told me that he wanted to give me a tour of the F-35. And so I got a tour, went on tour with Lieutenant Colonel, and his handle is Matrix. I won't tell you his name, but I will tell you his handle is Matrix. And I got to see a couple F-35s land and take off. And at this particular time in the history of the United States, this is our most sophisticated warplane. It's a stealth warplane, and it has some unique options in it. And there's 3 different versions. There's an A, B, and C, and there's one for the Marines and one for the Navy, one for the Air Force. And the one for the Marines does vertical takeoff, and then the Air Force version does the conventional takeoff. What I was talking to them, and I thought it was interesting, like he said, "Have you seen this helmet?" And so I said to him, "Is that the helmet that allows the pilot to look through the aircraft?" And he looked at me, and he said, "Yes." And after that, he was asking me questions, and I was answering them for him. But the F-35, I mean, I think they're $1.5 billion a piece.
Oh, and my God. Are there
a single engine?
Pictures of it on the internet? Yeah, go ahead.
The single engine F-35, it's fly-by-wire totally. I mean, there's, it's just, the pilot sits there and he's got his right hand on a little stick, and then his left hand's the throttles and armaments. And it's just an amazing aircraft for this period of American history. But it's a total stealth aircraft. And the Russians and the Chinese will eventually catch up. I think the Chinese are very close to catching us. But at the Edwards Air Force Museum, they had a retired A-10 there. And that was the tank buster that basically shot a 20-millimeter cannon, and the ammunition was depleted uranium bullets. Wow. So it melted the tank. And so the F-35, what it does is contour flying. You can't see it coming, and then it basically comes up on the target, and it releases whatever ordnance they want to. But it's just amazing to watch these things take off and land. I literally had to put my hands over my ears because the noise is horrific. But like this lieutenant colonel that gave me the one-on-one, he basically went from flying the A-10 to the F-16, and now he's in the F-35. But they train mostly in simulators. But I enjoy going out to Edwards Air Force Base. It's 500 200 acres there, and it's probably one of the cleanest and nicest Air Force bases you could ever go to. I would say they do a lot for the personnel there. But their museum, if you go to the museum there, if you're lucky enough to be invited to the museum, one of the things they have is the SR-71 sitting outside. And you really get a sense that, you know, it flew in 1959 for the first time. And this was something out of the Skunk Works, and Kelly Johnson and Ben Rich put that thing together in 1959. But what is admitted now is they had extraterrestrial help. And the F-35 will continue to be, I would say, for at least a decade, an upgradable airframe. Everything they build since the B-52, upgradable airframes. That means that you have components that slide in and out, and you get greater longevity in these airframes that way. But the F-35 has these two guns on it, on the top of the aircraft, and then it also under the wings can carry missiles and some of the biggest bomb payloads there are. So it's almost a bomber and fighter. But the helmet, they tell me, costs a few $1 million, and it's a heads-up display in the helmet. So the pilot, he sees, whether it's night or day, he sees everything. And he can see, looking down a little bit, he can see whatever's underneath the aircraft. So that's done with cameras that are placed underneath this aircraft. So you literally, there's no blind spots. And in a dogfight, you're one up on everybody. But the interesting thing is that the guns are just for short bursts. You can't just, it's not a sustained burst. So you really have to see the target, put it in the crosshairs, and push down on the button. But it's an amazing airframe. And I would love to fly one, but it won't happen.
You don't think that's going to happen?
No.
Yeah, I'm looking at the craft, and I'm going to put some pictures up on the page we're creating for today's show. So it can be used on an aircraft carrier as well, it looks like?
Yes, the Navy, the Air Force, and the Marines. This is their fighter. But it also has an option to take off vertically, just as the Harrier jump jets did. And they test it out at Edwards Air Force Base all three ways. All three branches test that aircraft there in all three versions. It's amazing. Just amazing.
So are we selling this to other people? It says that Israel is welcoming its F-35.
I believe that the Israelis, if they pay for it, they get it. And as you know, the Israelis remain America's best allies in the Middle East and probably the world. You know, you just have to understand that we have had a history with Israel from the very beginning, when they declared themselves a state after World War II. And the United States was instrumental in helping them do that.
So I have a couple of questions about the craft. Okay, so you said it's very noisy, but extraterrestrial craft tends to be noiseless. So,
absolutely
was this designed?
Quiet.
Yeah. So
Absolutely
was this
quiet.
part ET technology, and if so, why didn't they make it quiet? why is it so noisy? Yeah.
You know, that's the thing I was discussing with them, and they asked me some questions about extraterrestrial craft, and they asked me about the TR-3B, and I said, well, look, TR3B has two forms of propulsion, one for inside the atmosphere and one for outside the atmosphere. I said,
Right.
you know yourself that it can't fly at, Mach 2 in the atmosphere. You tear the wings off of it. But once you're up there in space, you can go faster than the speed of light. And then they asked
So
about
these people that you talk to are in the regular military, but they're aware of the secret space program technologies, the people you talk to?
I believe these guys have seen TR3B and TR6 Telos, but they won't talk about that. They will not. It's just like while I was at the Edwards Air Force Base Museum, and I started to talk to them about Area 51 and the aircraft there, and they get very quiet. They won't.
Is there some kind of penalty for them if they even talk about it?
They are told not to talk about it, and I get away with it, and they know I get away with
it. Hey, John, can I ask you about the craft? This leads into a whole bunch of my interests that you were flying when you got in the battle with ADAD on the way to Kepler 69C.
Yes.
What were you flying, and what kind of armament did you have, and what did he have? What was that like?
Well, TR6 Telos has plenty of offensive weaponry, right down to the Tesla death ray. And in the book, we talk about the Tesla death ray and the biggest of them all, the 1000 series. And I think that's still the gun to me, because if you get hit with it, you're disintegrating. It's so powerful. And this gun, like Tesla had invented it, I think in around 1947. And when he died, the first thing that happened was the FBI went over and confiscated all his work on it. And then it was built and tested again. And some people wanted to use it after that. And they're afraid to. But eventually we'll get to the point where we'll be using it. And the armaments, let's talk about that. Shielding, electronic shielding. You put shields up. A lot like when you see the series Star Trek and they say we put shields up, you have electronic shields. But shields are nothing more than an electronic barrier, a gravitational barrier, if you will. And what happened was they realized that the Earth has a gravitational barrier to keep some harmful things from hitting us. And they looked at it and said, why couldn't we do that for a spacecraft? And they asked the question of extraterrestrials and said, yes. And so that technology is black technology and something not really invented here, but we understand it and we use it. Yes.
So that's called the TR6 Telos? Is that what you called it?
Yes.
What is that? TR6 Telos.
It has sustained, unlike our public craft, it has the ability to keep powering until it destroys the target.
Yes. And wow. You can launch fighters from it, and the fighters are equipped with the Tesla death ray also. So the potential for them to be very decisive in battle. It exists there.
So let me tie a bunch of things together because I've been following your stuff. When when you went to Nibiru, and everybody on this station really wants to know more about Nibiru, but when you went to Nibiru, you said you met Adapa there.
Yes.
And that he was way big. And so I would like you to, first of all, and that's the guy you wind up in this battle with later on, but what's it like to be with a person that's way big compared to you?
It's a little intimidating. It's always intimidating. Nibiru, you have to understand that you're seeing lots of species that we've never really talked about before, but the Anunnaki are tall. 8 feet, 9 feet, I don't think that's a big thing for them. They vary a little bit between that number, but they're tall and muscular. And I would say that the one thing that really struck me when I was on Nibiru was I saw the military there. And I saw that some of the military has the heads of a bird and wings and had flight. And
wow.
So
how
do you think that's...
Wait, how were the wings attached? Were they part of the scapulae? What was it like in their musculature?
I didn't look that close, but it seems to me that more attached to their spine, and
wow.
There are a set of wings, upper and lower, 4 wings.
Oh,
Okay? 4 wings with the head of a bird. And we see this in stone all over the world. Okay?
Yeah.
And the head's a bird head. And I definitely think that they were genetically engineered to be a warrior class and to be used in battle. Then I did see some that looked more like Anubis. And I thought, wow, these guys are very tall, muscular, and ground troops. That's what.
Wow.
So, and we're seeing this in Nibiru also. And we've seen this all over Egypt. And so I'm thinking the pantheon of the gods. And we know from Egyptian bas-reliefs that they experimented gene splicing. That's what they were good at.
Mm-hmm.
But the one individual that I've been very interesting for some time, I didn't see anything like Thoth. And I was very keen, to see
with the
something like Thoth.
Space, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And Thoth is a prince, an Atlantean prince king. And they say that he founded Egypt. And that Thoth built the Great Pyramid of Giza.
Yeah. Yeah, I read that too in the Sumerian.
And what blows me away about Thoth is there's been a lot said about him, and some of it you have to sift through it to really figure out the truth of it. But they say that Thoth was a shape shifter.
Mm-hmm.
And he also had the persona of Hermes Trismegistus.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a Greek god. But Thoth, he's credited with writing and mathematics and other things. And I've done a lot of research lately into the Giza pyramid and to the Sphinx. I don't think the head on the Sphinx was recut. But what I discovered from all my research was that Thoth, I believe, was the engineer of the Great Pyramid.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's nothing more than an astrological clock.
Mm-hmm.
But these guys knew about pi, and they knew about the golden ratio. They figured out, because they have it in the pyramid, the rate of rotation of the Earth. They knew about the speed of light. And the other thing that just kills me about the Giza pyramid is it's absolutely at the center of the planet. And
Right.
then all these other ancient sites like Easter Island and Umapunku and Tiwanaku and other things with the same architecture all line up to the Giza pyramid. And it's a real interesting answer. But I firmly believe that those blocks were not moved on rollers over the desert with
Right.
slave power.
Yeah, that's
You know,
silly
all of
way.
the books are wrong. And levitation. So the reality is that at some point, man or the Anunnaki had created a civilization that is more advanced than we are now. And what happened was there was a war, and Professor Robert Schoch has detected signs where stone reliefs melted. And there's several places. The Colossi of Memnon melted a little bit from intense heat. There's so many things. Libyan glass, there was a detonation of a nuclear device there, and that at Mohenjo-Daro there was a detonation there. So at some point there was a nuclear war on this planet and knocked us back to the caveman age.
Right. So you've
John-
been. Go ahead. Go ahead, Sasha.
Well, okay. So, in my research about the when the Anunnaki used Bigfoot ancestor Erectus genes to adapt their genome to make miners for them.
Yes.
The first baby, what Nima had written, the boy was brown-skinned with brown-red skin like the clay of Africa. And he was like the Anunnaki in every way, except that he had a foreskin. But that meant, if you really think it through logically, that there had to be brown-skinned people on Nibiru. And I just wondered did you observe any brown-skinned people on Nibiru?
Yes. They're not all white. They are not.
What are
Thank
their
you so
skin
much.
tones? Yeah, what are the skin tones of the Anunnaki that you observed? Because I've
I
heard
would
that
say
some
that-
beings are blue and pink and green and orange. What did you observe personally?
Within the royal Anunnaki family, white. I would see other people in the marketplace and in the public areas of varying shades. I saw these Anubis-looking soldiers, and they were dark black, just like some Negro people have very dark black skin. That's what they had. And so, yes, I saw that too. So there were shades, and I think that there were different people. The other thing that really struck me while on Nibiru. They had slaves, and the slaves looked like Mayan Indians.
Wow.
And they weren't tall. And they were another class altogether. And Adama had them in his household as servants.
How did he treat them?
They were treated very well. But this goes back to all these pyramids where you see there's a platform at the top and the big wide steps going up to the platform in Mexico and South America.
Right.
These are loading platforms. And for so long, like archaeologists have been saying, what happened to these populations? Well, here's the answer. They were taken away. Now, one of the things that I talk about, cyborgs, with very little effort, they take a human and turn it into a cyborg, and you give it instructions, and it follows those instructions no matter what. It has,
and that's what we're finding in the secret space program, that they have human trafficking. They take a lot of human beings away. Some of them they put in the secret space program. Some are sex slaves, some are worker slaves, some are military slaves, and some are created or made into cyborgs. So you have witnessed this personally, or is this just information that you?
I
tell
know
us about what you
the
saw.
military right now is experimenting with cyborgs, and as time goes on, they will create super soldiers in the laboratory, and they will be cyborgs. In other words, you give them the training and the instructions, and they just do what they're told. There's no.
So what does that mean to be a cyborg? Are they have some mechanisms attached to them? What percentage is left as human? What percentage is robotics?
The brain there has implantations. You don't see too much done internally besides the mental implants. There's some implants that they put for identification in their forearms. I've had that. But the main thing is we will see exoskeletons that basically it's a cyborg. It's got an exoskeleton that basically is a combination of Kevlar and other materials that makes it impervious to bullets and things like this, bombs going off nearby. It can still complete the mission. In other words, it's armored. Mm-hmm. And we're right on the cusp of it now. The military wants this for its soldiers now in Afghanistan and Iraq. They're just all over it. Body armor.
Wow.
Hey, John.
So have you seen these people? Let me just ask: have you seen these people in person yourself? Have you seen these cyborgs?
I've seen experimentation. Yes, and I've seen in the future we're going to have it. We'll just do it. The problem is for the military is this.
Go ahead.
That 70 to 80% of the people graduating what are high school in the United States are unfit for military service. That's the issue.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I mean,
and what makes them unfit?
They have habits, tattoos, piercings, you name it. They barely got by in high school, they're looking for intellect and strength and stamina. That's what they need in the cockpit and on the battlefield. They don't need something. The first time an order is issued to them, they can't say, well, I don't want to do that.
Right. So they have to obey. And then before we get too far down the line, what were you donating to the museum? We forgot to finish that thread.
I'm going to donate a flight suit that I wore in a TR-3B and a flight suit that I wore when I was commander on a TR-6 Telos. Have my name on it.
Wow. John, are you command? Are you as your rank now? When you would say rank retired, are you a general or a colonel, or what are you in Air Force terms?
I get my retirement pay is general.
Okay, that's. Oh, I like that.
Do you have a picture of yourself in your suit you're donating? Let me just ask this real quick. Do you have a picture of yourself in the suit you're donating? Are you allowed to take one? Or?
I have them. I'm not sure that if I distribute that, I will be in the good graces of my handler.
Yeah.
They'll say you issued photographs without my permission again. I frequently get in trouble. I think that I just had a handler change too. I had one guy, and he says, "You keep getting me in trouble." I said, "I don't know what you're going to do about it." And then, like sometimes these guys accompany me when I go to Edwards or I go to Area 51, and the entire time they're saying that, don't say anything, about this. Don't say anything about that. So I usually try to comply, but sometimes they ask the question, are we going the right direction? Is this what you had in the year 2035, What kind of opposition were we expecting in space in the year 2035, 2036? That's what they always want to know that one.
Oh, they want to know. What's the answer?
And I tell them, I do tell them that one, so they know. But the answer is, and like when you go back to the first 50 caliber machine gun that we had within the U.S. military, and they still use it, and there are smaller versions, I think 30 caliber versions, but so you have to look at the first death ray invented by Tesla as having a lifespan that will go on for quite a while, and that is in its biggest, the TP-1000 is just devastating. On a direct hit, it disintegrates whatever's it's hit.
And that's a death ray, Tesla's death ray.
Yeah.
It's called the TP-1000.
Yeah.
And how does that work? Do you know how it works? What's the theory behind it?
I'm going to tell you what Lieutenant Colonel Matrix told me about the F-35. He says, I just fly it. I don't know how it works.
Right.
And I got to look at all of the inner workings of the F-35, and it is a true fly-by-wire. I mean, and I asked him about redundant systems and things like that. And it turns out there are redundant systems, but he doesn't know how it works. There's a guy on the ground that maintains it that knows how it works. So I would have to refer you to somebody that maintains a TP-1000. But the TP-1000 is something that the Russians don't have, the Chinese don't have, the North Koreans don't have, And I hope to God they never get it. It would tempt the
So
balance of
how do
power.
we keep them? How do we keep them from getting this stuff? You said that in the past shows that we are still the most advanced.
We are.
We've been doing shows going back to like how this came. Apparently, the Nazis and the aliens were interacting with the Nazis. So this goes back a long time where humanity is given technology. Where are we getting our technology? Are we reverse engineering it? And which species are helping us do those type of things?
Well, basically, I've talked to people that work for Ben Rich at Lockheed, and one of them used to read his correspondence, and she told me that she used to get correspondence almost every day about extraterrestrials and extraterrestrial spacecraft, and it was no big thing with Ben Rich. But he kept it secret until he died. And we reverse engineered their spacecraft. But one of the things that happened in the early 50s is we have a signed agreement with the tall whites. And these are I would say they're on the Kardashev scale. Are you familiar with that?
Yes.
At least a 6 or a 7. And on the Kardashev scale, we're a level 0.
Right.
And it's not encouraging from that perspective. But what happens is that they trade black technology for different things. I wrote an article not too long ago, and it's titled "The Reason for Mankind's Existence." And if you read that, you'll come up to why we exist, and in light of the fact that there are extraterrestrials that are far more advanced than we are, and that could probably snuff out mankind in a heartbeat. But we know that they do cattle mutilations, and we know they do abductions and experimentation on us. And the one factor in all of this became self-evident with 2 astronauts that were identical twins, Mark and Scott Kelly. And one stayed on the ISS for about a year. And when he came back, they compared his DNA to his brother, his twin. And his DNA had changed. Prolonged space flight will modify your DNA. And so...
How did it change?
In all the bad ways. Reproduction
bad ways.
And other things. So when they abduct female Homo sapiens and they remove eggs, you're getting a glimpse of what their problem is. Reproduction of their species. And the other thing is that I think they've looked at a suspended animation and things like that, and they haven't been able to make it work. They have not been able to prevent a decline of DNA on prolonged space flights. That's the issue. Yeah, you can get there, and you will not have aged, but your DNA seems to degrade. And that's the problem for these species that have roamed this galaxy and probably others. Their DNA degraded. And very likely, when their species propagated, they were less than what they were. They retained the knowledge that they had accumulated, but they were less than what they were. And I think very likely an example of this is the gray aliens.
Do you still have contact with your gray alien friend? What was his name again? Rock or something like that?
Yeah, Rock. We get together. Usually around Super Bowl, 1 or 2 days before, or 1 or 2 days after. He swings by. It's that simple. You know, like I told people some time ago, you know, like they have the ability to beam up and beam down. And there are photographs of gray aliens beaming up and beaming down. We have that technology too now. We've gotten that. Mm-hmm. And we also have technology as far as invisibility. The first time it was photographed was in the Desert Storm, the first Desert Storm in Iraq. And there was a Marine wearing a suit that rendered him pretty much invisible, except in a dust storm. And he's seen going over to a tank and someone waiting there for him and him getting inside the tank. And
I think I saw that, yeah.
A photographer embedded with the forces took that video clip. And so that was the first time we knew we had the ability on record. But it's proliferating. I just saw something the other day where someone just basically unfolded something and put it up in front of them, and they were invisible. That easy. So there's some technology that we have that is just incredible. The one thing about the tall whites, and I want to impress this on the audience, is that they had in 1952 an agreement, and they got a spaceport that was built at Indian Springs, which is now called Creech Air Force Base. And if you look on Google and Charles White and Creech Air Force Base, you can see the history of what's gone on there. And there are photographs of tall white spacecraft. And it all comes down to they have that spaceport. I believe they have others. There's no doubt in my mind that they are superior to the Anunnaki. And the Anunnaki know it. I don't think the one thing that historically about the Anunnaki, I believe they roamed this galaxy and probably others. They were a warrior race. They went around looking for what they're most interested in, which is precious metals and other things of value, and gold in particular. And at some point, I think they brushed up against the tall whites. And I think the tall whites, basically, and the Anunnaki went at it. And it was very one-sided. I believe that the Anunnaki had a civilization on Mars. And there's no doubt in my mind that when they kicked butt on Earth, they kicked butt on Mars. They basically leveled.
Where do you think the tall whites? Where did the tall whites originate from? What planet? Are they from Earth or another planet?
They're not from Earth, and I don't think they're from this galaxy. I believe they may be from another galaxy, possibly Andromeda. That's the closest galaxy to us. That is more than likely. I know that a lot of what the Air Force is working on is trying to traverse from this galaxy to another galaxy. The other nearest galaxy is Andromeda. They did those simulations, and they do them very successfully. They know what it takes now. It's not.
So how is it in your explanation that? So you were given some background when you were in this program about the civilizations in existence. Is that how you have a lot of this information? How did you come to have this awareness besides running into them? Did they give you orientation on the species that exist and where they came from?
in talking to them, I would say you don't really talk as telepathy. And
right, yeah.
you do sit down in a room with them, and they actually gave me some missions, some things they wanted me to do. And I was the team lead, and there was no doubt in my mind that I was going to do what they told me to do. But I did ask some questions, and they said, like, no, we're not the Anunnaki, and we're not related to them. We are superior to them on the Kardashev Scale. And they went as far to say is that they had been in a conflict with the Anunnaki at some point. And I went on to extrapolate, and I said, on Earth and Mars, and they said yes. And I said, and are you in a protectorate mode here? Or are you just protecting the planet? And they said yes. The Earth is a protectorate of the tall whites. And almost everybody knows it now. I mean, Edward Snowden, the documents that he took out of the NSA, one of the documents was the signed document with the tall whites. And then when Obama was president, Vladimir Putin wanted Obama to go public. And then Hassan Rouhani, the Iranian prime minister, wanted him to go public because ultimately military decisions do not rest with the president of the United States. There are some things that he has the power to do, and there are some things that he has to check in about. You see what I'm saying?
Right. He's not really
Donald
the
Trump
one that makes the final decision.
Yeah, and at some point, like we have a leader of North Korea, and he thinks that he's going to be able to take on the world, when in fact, if he absolutely launched something that was going to hit the United States, the tall whites very likely would take him out very swiftly. And the United States remains able to protect its sovereignty among other nations of the world. But
so why do they like us so much, the tall whites, if we're not them and we're not related in any type?
It goes back to what I talked about, DNA, and then monitoring the food chain. I think that to some degree that they expect mankind to evolve, absolutely, to get better. But I think we're in for trying times. One of the biggest things.
Are they?
The biggest threat to mankind
we'll talk
now
about the prophecy.
Is the environment. And we have more plastic in the ocean than fish. And that the air
so we've
that
got to
we
work
breathe
on that.
is really not fit to breathe. We've done so much mismanagement as far as natural resources. It's pathetic. Like on the western United States, the fires in California, they can't put them out. They did do forest management, and so now when a forest fire starts, they really wait for them to burn out. In the process, people lose their lives and their houses, and it's ridiculous.
So what's going on with the tall whites that they don't intervene? I mean, they live here too, right? They have a colony here, and they have their own children here.
They don't.
Isn't it their air too?
Yeah, and I would say that they're able to breathe it, and it has no effect on them. So whatever. but I don't know that much about their physiology. The fact that they're tall humanoids and their skin is pale, blonde or reddish hair. They look sickly, but they're not. They're healthy.
Mm-hmm.
And
have you ever talked to Charles? What's his name? Charles Hall about the tall whites? Because he.
I've talked to, I think, Charles Hall once years ago, and that was it. And I wanted him to become part of a foundation that I sponsored. And his wife basically approached me and said that he didn't want to do it. So I said, fine. You know,
she's a big time controller.
Yeah, we met them last year. They're very nice, but she's definitely the boss.
so she's
okay, we're coming up with the break. Yeah. Okay, here's the break. We'll be back in 5 minutes, and then we're going to go into some of the things that are coming up down the line. We'll be back in 5. Thank you.
Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
In breaking news, a visiting Syrian diplomat reported today that their population is evolving rapidly and advancing into a fifth-dimensional consciousness. They are seeking peace with all cosmic cultures, which may mean that the Earth will be asked to join the prestigious Galactic Federation of Light Alliances. Please join Debbie West and Michael Hathaway on Lost Knowledge, Saturdays, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time in Studio A, for the latest breaking news on the Star Visitors' peaceful contact and the ongoing project of cleansing the Earth.
Who are you? I am the architect. I created the Matrix. I've been waiting for you. Why am I here? You are the eventuality of an anomaly which, despite my sincerest efforts, I have been unable to eliminate from what is otherwise a harmony of mathematical precision, which has led you inexorably here. You haven't answered my question. The Matrix is older than you know. As you are undoubtedly gathering, the anomaly is systemic, creating fluctuations in even the most simplistic equation. Choice. The problem is choice.
Right here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. Be here Wednesday evening at 8 p.m. Eastern Time for Private Eye Matrix Revealed with Monique Lessin.
Hello, my name is Mr. Rowe. I am the host of Reality Extraction on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. I utilize logic, intellect, and magic to methodically atomize, vivisect, analyze, examine, study, scrutinize, and extract an essence of reality from a fog of illusion and confusion. You can find me on Studio B every Thursday at 1700 hours Pacific Time. That's 8 p.m. Eastern. No topic taboo, no subject too strange. I strive to take a neutral standpoint during the dissection of the topic at hand. That's Reality Extraction with Mr. Rowe on Revolution Radio.
This is Thomas, a.k.a. a Mad Painter. I'd like you to join me Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Open Canvas. Don't forget to bring an open mind.
Yes, folks, that's right. Bring an open mind to an open canvas. Again, that is Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern. UFOs to government corruption. This is Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here.
Thanks for tuning in to Revolution Radio. Here at Revolution Radio, we are listener-sponsored and commercial-free. But there still are bills to pay. In order to raise some needed funds to cover the cost, our station is offering a silver special. In the continental United States for a $60 donation, or in Alaska, Hawaii, or Canada for a $70 donation, we will send you an uncirculated 2018 1-ounce pure silver eagle. The $70 donation, the extra 10 is to cover shipping, by the way, outside of the continental United States. When making the donation, you must put Silver Eagle promo in the notes on the donation. And thank you for tuning in to Revolution Radio at revolution.radio and freedomslips.com. Without you, there is no us. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
Collision Course is back. Schedule will be on Revolution Radio every Saturday night, 6 to 8 p.m. You get outer space. You get honest answers, real researchers, truthful answers, and a place to engage with questions. Take part in the discussion. Revolution Radio on freedomslips.com hosts Collision Course every Saturday from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. Central, 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. Mountain Time, and 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. Pacific Time.
The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Aloha and welcome back to Stargate to the Cosmos, and I'm your host, Janet Lessin, with my co-host, Dr. Sasha Alex Lessin, and our producer, Thomas Becker. And you can find us on revolution.radio, and our guest is John Titor II. But we're going to take a little moment here to ask everybody to please go over to that donation button on revolution.radio and make your donation today. We're coming up at the end of 2018, and the year is gone. So we want you to please donate so we can keep bringing you shows all through 2019 and through to the end of time. So, Thomas, what's our fundraising totals thus far? Oh, we just started a new month. Yeah, did we make our quota last month?
Oh, yes, ma'am. We did, and we have $173 so far, and we need $28.50.
$28.50 for the month of December. All righty. So let us have a very happy Christmas and New Year's. Please go over and donate. Sasha, before we bring back John, what would you like to say about what we've been covering thus far?
What I really been wanting very, very much to understand is this thing about people like you, General Titor, who have intervened in the time flow to save aspects of humanity, and that whole idea that there's a course of good guys Who determined your mission, John? Commander, where did you contribute to deciding on?
At some point, my missions were dictated to me right out of the Joint Chiefs in Washington, D.C. They would basically say, you're going to have a meeting tomorrow at Area 51 or Creech Air Force Base, or you're coming to Washington, D.C. And it just depended on their availability and my availability, and we would decide. And if I traveled, I had bodyguards, especially in Washington, D.C. They stressed that I was to have bodyguards, at least 2, and normally on an Air Force base or installation, at least 1. Driver, bodyguard. It came down to that. They would give me the mission, and it wasn't mine to approve it or, even ask questions more than the logistics. They just said, this is what we want done, do it. And that's what happened. I would do it. There were some times that I wanted to do particular things that would help the timeline, I thought, and I was turned down. I thought there was a way to prevent 9/11 totally, and they looked at it, and then I was turned down. And there were some other things historically. We looked at it, and then I was turned down. And they looked at the eventualities. And 9/11, I thought that certainly if we just apprehended these people that were trying to take flying lessons on passenger aircraft and not interested in landing but just taking off or flying, that was all part of it. And I got a resounding.
So you're saying they looked at they somehow had a way to go into the future and see if we had this timeline, where it would go, where it would end up on, is that what you're saying?
I believe they looked at it from that perspective. And some of it came down to a political, economic decision. And by that I mean, if this doesn't happen, that's all well and good. We save lives, but then these things happen. And the other things that could happen might be far worse.
So it's obvious
one of the things
they wanted the United States to go to Iraq for some reason. It's got to be that, because since that was what the consequences were. What was that all about, John?
Iraq and Afghanistan.
Yeah.
And in Afghanistan, it is not a myth. It's not fiction. They actually found a Vimana there. And I don't know that they were able to retrieve it. I've heard about it several times from reliable sources. And there was a problem moving it. But it was something worth going after. Going after ISIS in Iraq, maybe it had to happen. I believe that ISIS was nothing more than a vacuum that filled with Baghdadi was the guy's name. And he filled the vacuum. He was released from prison, and he created ISIS. But it was all part of us going there and making war on the civilian population. I'm to some degree, my personal beliefs are that war always has to be the last solution, but sometimes it's unavoidable, and I don't like it, but it's just there. We have at various times in our history, we've had leaders that didn't want to go to war, but took us to war. In 1917, Woodrow Wilson took us to war in Europe, the war to end all wars. In World War II, 1942, Theodore Roosevelt declared war on the Japanese and Germany at the same time. We would have to say Wilson was more of a pacifist than Roosevelt, but Roosevelt wanted to see America move to action, and there was so much of a movement in America headed by powerful and rich people not to go to war. And had we delayed, the UK would have fallen, and we would probably have been next. So it had to happen.
Wow, that's a powerful thank you so much. That's really a powerful analysis.
You know, North and South Korea, I believe that Kim Jong-un, who I have advocated for a long time that someone should assassinate, I think that he's seen the handwriting on the wall. And have you noticed that since he met with Trump, there have been no missile launches over Japan?
Right. What do you think happened? Was there a threat made, or?
Here's what, if I was a fly on the wall, here's what I think. Mm-hmm. And the Donald just told him, he said, if you ever, North Korea could be vaporized in a heartbeat. And no matter what you're fighting, you'll be vaporized too. So I believe that Kim Jong-un, you know, like he is the people that have vowed to kill him in South Korea and Japan, other places. They just want to get a shot at him. You know, the whole thing is, if he moves to unification of North and South Korea and bows out of control of the North, he'll save his own life, ultimately. But
that would be really fitting to go full scale from, you know, this, what you told us about what happened. There wouldn't be a China to help make the peace there if it wasn't for you. And at the beginning of the show, I just alluded to that wonderful story about how time travel works, so people can understand it. And and I got it that you were just sent on your mission. And could you tell us the story for our listeners?
I think that at the peak of my career, and I was considerably younger, I was relieved of command and sent off to language school. And there are a couple dialects the Chinese speak, and they told me to learn both. And the other one, the higher level, I learned it and got through it and could speak it. And writing Chinese is a whole nother thing. They didn't even want me to be able to write. They just said, you need to be able to speak it. Everyday conversant. And so I could get to that point. And as soon as they did, they pulled me out of the language school in Monterey, California, which is still there. And they pulled me back to Area 51, and they gave me the mission. And they said, this is the mission. And I went back to 230 BC in China to see the Emperor Qin and what was known by extraterrestrial allies was that the Anunnaki were going to go back in time and attempt to get a foothold on Earth in China at that time frame and lay claim and get access to huge amounts of gold, a treasury that overflowed with it, with Emperor Qin. And he was about 22, 23 years old at this time. And I was sent there, and I had shadowing me two divisions of one division being gray aliens and their spacecraft, and another division almost up to what would be 1,000 soldiers in stationary orbit over the Earth, ready to beam down on my command. And I was to go to the court of the emperor and basically win him over. And I was doing it preemptively before the Anunnaki had arrived. But they did, in fact, arrive while I was there. And they came in on these devices that are like hover boards, but they are a little bit higher off the ground. And they fly on them. And when they fly into the court, they're frightening. And they're big. And they're menacing. And basically, I went there as a trader that offered them repeating crossbows. Very interesting piece of technology. A repeating crossbow, if you will. The crossbow bolt travels almost at the speed of a bullet. And then the tips on the bolt's steel or chrome combination, deadly. And then I was offering them the ability to chrome plate spearheads and swords. And historically, in China, these weapons have been unearthed. And the chrome swords, if you run your finger over them, will still cut you. They made the swords very sharp. And when I was in the court, I was not, while I tried to portray the part of being just a white trader of European descent, and my mustache and hair being much longer than it is today, but about the same mustache, I would say. And during that time, I was challenged to a duel. And I had 4 people with me, and I was challenged to a duel by this general who was the new general of this emperor's armies. And it was not a duel I could back out of. But I did have a sword, and it was a good one. And I was given the opportunity to defend myself. And I wasn't sure that I was going to make it through the fight. And I was lucky enough to get a couple of good strikes in. And ultimately, I cut off his arm in the fight. He landed a couple things on me, but they weren't significant. I wasn't bleeding badly. And then he went down on one knee, and I cut his head off, and that was the end of it. And then the emperor was just amazed that I could do it. And I do practice with wooden swords still, and still have a favorite sword. Among all the weapons that I've collected, I have a favorite sword. And yes, this thing, if you touch it with your finger, it'll cut you. And but I never want to bring a sword to a gunfight, And I have such an array of armaments. We could talk about my collection of armaments for hours probably, but I will tell you.
So wait, so these guys are coming down, and you've offered in time. You've offered these guys repeating firing from crossbow, an innovation in weaponry for the Hans.
Yeah. And what happened was, well, after the day after the fight, the Emperor summons me, and I said, "Oh God, I'm really in trouble now. Was it going to be water torture? What is it?" I went, and all of my team says, "Don't screw this up. It'll be our heads." And I was worried, and he said to me that I was now the general of his army.
Whoa.
And so I said, "Oh, okay." And so I said, "But I'm really not sure I'm the man for the job." And he says, "There's no refusal on this." And so what I learned very quickly at the Emperor's court, if you refused a request, they had a very quick solution. They took you out to the courtyard and cut your head off. So, I mean,
oh,
and after you see a few, merciful beheadings, you whatever they want, you'll do it. So I went about with their craftsmen. We duplicated my designs and my model of a repeating crossbow, and then we got with their metallurgists, and I showed them how to chrome a sword and make crossbow bolts with the tips being made out of steel and chrome. And this was a tremendous upgrade for their army. And I had them working on that night and day in 2 shifts, 12-hour shifts. They just, I told the Emperor we have to be ready. And he said, "Ready for what?" And I says, "It's coming." And he said, "All right." And I was the general of the army. And what was very interesting was that my next in command was this Chinese soldier, and he went everywhere with me, listened to every word I said, and even when I was meeting a personal female friend in her apartments at the palace, he'd stand outside till I came out. I was never out of his sight. And then the Anunnaki, they came and they made their demands on him, and he was scared witless to see the Anunnaki, and they said that they will devastate everyone in the city and start with him, and gave him 24 hours to capitulate. And we had a plan in place to, once the Anunnaki landed and started to march on the palace, that was when we were going to take them down. And the whole thing was, I tried to lead from the front of the army, and I told the foot soldiers, I said, "Here's the thing. This is not a one-on-one battle. You have to get a leg wound on an Anunnaki and then get them down." And then the other thing that I wasn't really counting on is, when we talked about this, the Anunnaki that have the wings and the bird's head.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Well, a good third of those forces, that's exactly what they unleashed on us. And so, repeating crossbows. And I told them, the head, get the head. And that's what they did. And I said, once they're on the ground, you cut the head off. And I said, gang up on them. And so the total command of my army, between 10 and 20,000 foot soldiers. And they were, if you gave them an order, they knew they had to follow it. There's no, but I don't want to. No. They follow orders, or they're taken aside and they cut their head off.
Wow. Now you were learning Chinese, so you were learning our Chinese. How did that translate to this ancient Chinese? Were you caught like that you didn't know their Chinese, or did you have to improvise? What did you do?
The whole thing was they spoke more like Cantonese, and it's either Mandarin or Cantonese. And I, being a European, that's what I said I was. They said sometimes that they had a hard time following, but I would catch on eventually, or they would catch on, or they would ask for a clarification, but we got through it. But it's I would say Mandarin is the high language and Cantonese is the low language. They seem to speak more Cantonese, but I don't know why. But once
the battle,
in
the battle, what happened?
In the battle?
Yeah, were there prisoners? Was there surrender? What happened?
I think that the gray aliens took everybody out in the air that they could, and that was considerable. They had the weapons, and they were basically cloaked and waiting for them. And they and then I had roughly 1,000 people with modern weapons and what amounted to TP-100 rifles, which is a big, like a plasma rifle. And they hit the ground. And what I tried to do afterwards on cleanup was I destroyed all the weapons that the Anunnaki had, and then I didn't try to leave anything behind of what we used, because I didn't want to give this emperor a power to just take over the world. I'd already upgraded his army with what was serious technology for the day. Chrome swords, oh man, and a repeating crossbow. I mean, it was awesome for them. But we carefully destroyed everything. And at the end, at one point during the battle, I get picked up by one of these winged guys. They single me out. They get a hold of my arm. They tear my arm out of the socket and throw me. And my right eye is damaged, and I have some abdominal injuries, and I'm knocked unconscious for a few minutes, and I get up and I stand there, and soldiers run over to me, and I try to go back to the front of the what is the fighting, and remain at the front for as long as I can. But the entire battle, I would say half a day. And
wow.
It was, I think, the culmination of everything I was ever trained for at that one moment. But I believe that if the Anunnaki could have gotten a foothold, then they would have done things differently, and they would have gotten their hands on a gold treasury, a huge amount of gold ingots. I saw it.
So somebody could see this coming down because they had time travel ability, and so you're part of somehow a time police that are stopping really terrible things from happening. And somebody's was directing you and your those that worked with you in this work. And so I just trying to get it, how this all came about, that you were placed there at the right time. Somebody knew what was coming down, and you changed everything. Right. If I understand it.
I think that it was probably spies within Adama's family on Nibiru. and with a little politics there, and they passed the information along to the gray aliens, and the gray aliens passed it along to us and said, this is going to go down, and we need to prepare. And
wow, that's it. Thank you. Wow.
So you have to understand, like there's a little politics back on Nibiru. Adama was indisputably in control, and after that, I would say that defeat hurt his prestige. And later, I would meet him in a conflict, and he would die.
So you said it was his kid. No, that Adama's kid was the leader of those forces.
Yes.
That somehow. Yes. So then you've got to face this guy, and you're the one that killed his kid. And,
killed his son.
Wonder wow.
He put a bounty on me. He wanted me. Mm-hmm. There's been a couple attempts on my life. I have to tell you. Here, last September, there was an attempt on my life, and it changed me. I'm so much more careful now. I always carry offensive weaponry on me now. Last September, I had my face crushed and all my ribs crushed, and I was left for dead. And I presumed that I was with friends and I had nothing to worry about. And that turned out not to be the case. And ultimately, Marcia ended up driving me to the hospital, and I was a bloody mess and had all these stitches over my right eye. And I would have to say that them just lifting me to do an MRI, a CAT scan on my body, I screamed at the top of my lungs. It hurt so bad. And they kept me on oxycodone, and I took some other drugs too. And it was a long time before I could just, in bed, roll on my side. And then my face was crushed right here on the right cheekbone, because most of all of that was in my mouth. And what I did was I took my thumb and pushed it on my teeth like that, and pushed my teeth and my jaw back into place. But my face always hurts right here. There's a nerve that won't heal. And, it's devastating that would happen to me.
And you're not young, even though you're a clone. You're still not young, and that's harder to heal when you're older. Do clones? Let me finish my question. Do clones heal faster, Sasha? My question. Do clones heal faster than regular people?
Yes.
And then you can ask a question.
And I would say that anyone else would have been dead. And I just woke up, and I don't know why. I sat up and I checked my extremities, my legs, my arms. I knew that my ribs were broken, and I was spitting blood out of my mouth. And that's when I just pushed my jaw back into place. And that's where it's been ever since. The doctors, when they worked me over, they said, you're very lucky to be alive. And I was absolutely left for dead. But, at the compound here, the only thing that happens around here, it's kind of strange, because I live a little bit in the country, and we have motion lights everywhere. We have cameras everywhere inside the house and outside the house. I have an ADT alarm system, and I carry this thing here. I'll hold it up for you. This little thing here has one little button on it. If I push that button, the guards come with the guns drawn. And it's that bad. I sleep pretty good, but this never leaves me. The little ADT package, I mean, I push the red button and they come. And there was one time the gardener came and hit a window with the rake. And we weren't here. And the ADT calls me and said, "Who do we send?" I said, "Send the sheriff." So the sheriff was greeted by guards, and then the gardener was basically scared out of his wits.
Yeah, wow.
But he's been told not to hit the window on the house, the rake. And I mean, that's all part of my security system here. I want Marcia to be secure, and I'm secure, and I don't even really drive myself anywhere anymore. Marcia and I are driven most of the time by a bodyguard. I just can't take chances.
Great. Sasha, did you have a question? Then I have another question when you're done. Go ahead, Sasha.
Okay, General, look, if you had had your personal firearm of your choice on you when you were attacked, could you have saved yourself this injury? Would that work for you if you had a firearm on you?
No, because I was hit from behind on the head and knocked unconscious. And then they proceeded to break my ribs and attempt to crush my face. And what I believe happened was someone walked up on them and they ran away. They stopped. And something I will tell you, this is very interesting. And there's been a few times when I've been knocked unconscious. I know when it happens, and I after a few minutes, I just say, "Oh, I've been knocked unconscious," and I just wake up. It's just like that. I just come to, and I go through the motions of seeing what the damage is, and taking appropriate action, which is usually seeking medical help right away.
Did you see the two people the two people that, or whoever it was that came that chased the people that were killing you away?
I've talked to them, and I know who, and I've already got that investigated fully. I know who did it and all the circumstances.
Wow.
And I've had one of my doctors say, "Well, if somebody did that to me, I'd kill him." I'd say, "Well, easy for you to say." Because, it might not play too well in a court of law.
Right.
Doesn't mean that I've forgotten anything or I've forgiven anything, but there's a time for everything.
I have a question. So President George H.W. Bush died recently, and you have on your site a blog that Bush, when asked about extraterrestrials, said Americans can't handle the truth. I believe that Americans and the rest of the world can handle the truth. Now, so he knew all the presidents, did they all know? It seems like this is coming out that these presidents, they do know about the extraterrestrial presence. What does Trump know about the secret space program? What does
he
know
knows.
about extraterrestrials? What did Bush knows? Did they all know?
Everybody from Eisenhower on knew. And Eisenhower saw demonstrations of what extraterrestrial spacecraft could do, flying in and out of the ocean. He'd met with them, and he's a signer to the first agreement with the Tall Whites. And I believe that there have been subsequent agreements with the Tall Whites, and that we have agreements with 3 other species. And all this is been related by Edward Snowden to Vladimir Putin and Hassan Rouhani and to the Premier of China. They all know. And I believe that
Who are
at
the
some
other
point,
species?
What's that?
Who are the other species that we are contracted to?
The Greys, the Reptilians, the Anunnaki. We have an agreement with them, but it's nothing like the Tall Whites, because virtually the agreement with the Tall Whites makes the United States and our NATO allies, our CETO allies, nothing less than protectorates. It's just the way it is.
You know. Uh-oh.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Some incoming call.
I had a question.
Do you know?
I got a question.
Wait. Go ahead. Your question. Then I get one. Okay. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. So my listeners keep asking me about the talk you had with Yahweh on Kepler 69, and it just uplifted them, absolutely uplifted them about the communications that you got and what it was like to be in the presence, and it's like somehow that talk that you had. Could you share that with our listeners, how it came about and what it was like?
He lives on a country estate that is not his per se, but given to him by the people of that planet. And his wife, Lilith, and him, they're 8.5 feet tall, probably. I asked about his longevity, and he said that they were more than capable of perpetuating life almost indefinitely. But they also had the ability to replace vital organs, either with organ transplants or with devices that were manufactured. And he said that he was always more worried not about a physical breakdown, but mental capacity and diminished mental capacity. And I guess that is a worrisome thing. But what they don't have is a backup of their brain functions. So if the brain goes, then they have other choices to make. But very, very old, and I would not say that he was a functioning part of the government, but advisor, counselor to what would be the Planets Council. A very different. I asked about cloning, and Rock was there with me, and I said, about my genes, where did my genes come from? And he knew, And he said, "You have some special genes." And I said, "How special?" And Rock chimed in, "You have some of his." And I was very taken aback by that. It took me a long time to digest that. I said, "What does that mean?" And he asked me if I was long-lived for a human. And I said, "For a human clone, I'm very long-lived." I said, "Most of the ones that I was cloned with, they're all past now. They were deemed to be expendable, and most are gone." And he said, "Well, there's a distinct possibility that you will go on for quite some time." And we talked about mankind's destiny and what he thought it was. And he said that mankind right now is dealing with the tall whites. And on the Kardashev scale, they are past what his civilization is. They are past that. So, and I said, "Would you now or in the future consider any kind of military action against?" He says, "No, it would be devastating to them and us." He says, "That's the last resort." And on this planet, they had an army, but all defensive. It wasn't, and they, basically treated Nibiru as another civilization they were not a part of. They didn't want to be aligned with what was going on in Nibiru. But they had a monetary system that was very unique, I thought. And it basically, every transaction, a piece of the transaction, some percentage, went to the government. So there was no yearly taxes that everybody had to worry about, because taxes were just paid. I mean, you transferred money to someone, part of that transaction went to the government. That was it. That's how they did everything. And
did they have elections and presidents, or is it like all?
They had a ruling council,
signed?
Just one ruling council, and no countries. The entire planet was on one council, and they had laws similar to our laws. I mean, regarding personal liberties and things, like the slavery was not allowed. I mean, violence was abhorred in all cases. I mean, there were some things that, were punishable by death. They told me that. But they thought that crime was preventable and it was treated like a disease. And they said that they felt like this is someone that needs to be in hospital and undergoing therapy.
Mm-hmm.
They treated it as a mental disorder. And they
So how did someone be? Yeah, a mental disorder, and that makes sense. How did they get? How did somebody get to be part of their council? Was that a birthright, or was there
a popularity?
Did they rotate?
I think that you were asked to run. Basically, they didn't really have political parties. They had some infrastructure, and they it's like some people were in political positions, and then after a while they didn't want to be in the political position. But they treated graft and corruption within the government very harshly. That was not allowed at all. I mean, that's not what they were going to let persist. They
were people happy?
I believe that for the most part, people were allowed to pursue what they wanted to pursue. If they wanted to be in the arts or the sciences or whatever it was, they were allowed to pursue it. But it was important that they were able to still earn a living. And medical, I asked about medicals, and they said that's free for everybody. There is no, and they were very interested in quantitatively treating disease, on a whole. Nobody had to worry. If they had a disease, then they would be treated and they would be cared for. There was it was never a situation where they lost their life savings and are now living on the street. No.
Great.
So
how do we sign up?
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Good.
And Marcia and I were both offered citizenship on that planet. And, they were very kind to us. And it's not out of the realm of possibility that I won't go back at some point. I would tell you that if you read my second book, you'd find out that I have a spacecraft. And they gave me one.
Right.
IRS wants me to pay taxes on it, and the FAA wants to inspect it. And all I can say is it's on loan. And I have some paperwork to support that. And it sits in a hangar someplace safe. And not too long ago, this one guy, he contacts me and he wants me to consult on building a spacecraft. And so I said, well, sure, I'll consult with you. And so we started talking about it. And I said, I don't think that you have enough money to really interest me in the project. And I don't know that any amount of money would, but I just told him, I says, I have one. It's not a big deal. And I don't think that I'm the only one that has a spacecraft they can put their hands on. I think there are other people on this planet that have the ability to go to a hangar someplace and get in it and leave.
So,
wow, I'd like to know who those people are.
The big question, for me, what really stood out from when we talked before is the thought that Yahweh would be willing to assist the people of Earth in this time of their difficulty. Is that the message you got?
I think that it's a little bit more hands-off than that. I think that the tall whites are in indisputed control, and no one dares violate that. I mean, that is the law of the planet. Obama is scared to death to even say one word about the tall whites and Creech Air Force Base, which is where their spaceport is. I mean, he won't go there. And I mean, they've caught him talking off microphone, he thought, to Vladimir Putin. And he says, oh, I can't talk about that. That's what he says. He can't. Because they tell him, like, you cannot. But I tell it like it is. The tall whites at Creech Air Force Base have a spaceport there, and they've been there for a long time. And Creech Air Force Base, by the way, is the most heavily defended military base on this planet. The biggest drones that the United States have are in perpetual patrol around and over that base. And they have the capability to shoot down anything that gets close. So, I mean, it is, if you drive 1 hour north on 95 from Las Vegas. On the right side of the road is Creech Air Force Base. On the other side is Indian Springs. You can get off at the Indian Springs turnoff, pull into the Chevron station, get a tank of gas, and sit there for a few minutes, and you'll watch the biggest drones, the Predator drones, take off around 10 a.m. in the morning as they land and take off again after they get maintenance, and it's amazing. But you will see a 2-layer chain link fence, 10 feet tall, concertina wire, and then cameras everywhere. And then there's this road that goes east. And that road goes right out to Tall White Central, the spaceport.
Tall White
That's where
Central.
it is.
John, we're running out of time. We have about a minute left. What would you like to tell our listeners about how they can get? We'll have to have you back, but how can they get in touch with you about your books? We have like 1 minute.
My email is ltcjohntitor@gmail.com. Then if you want to read my white papers, go to 177th Time Travel Division on Facebook.
Thank you so much. Thank you, listeners. Aloha, love and blessings. See you on Sunday.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming, John.
Love rapping with you.
All right.
Aloha, blessings.
Aloha and blessings. Bye-bye.
Bye.
You're listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message. Thank you for listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. Any commercial advertising you may hear in this program is of the sole discretion and benefit of the host of whose program you are listening to. Revolution Radio does not endorse any commercial products, nor does it accept monetary compensation for on-air advertising of commercial products, nor will it ever. We are and shall remain 100% listener supported. Any product advertising on this program are considered used at higher risk, and Revolution Radio shall not be held liable for any claims or damages received from any product advertised within this program. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
Thanks for tuning in to Revolution Radio. Here at Revolution Radio, we are listener-sponsored and commercial-free, but there still are bills to pay. In order to raise some needed funds to cover the cost, our station is offering a silver special. In the continental United States for a $60 donation, or in Alaska, Hawaii, or Canada for a $70 donation, we will send you an uncirculated 2018 1-ounce pure silver Eagle. The $70 donation, the extra 10 is to cover shipping, by the way, outside of the continental United States. When making the donation, you must put Silver Eagle promo in the notes on the donation. And thank you for tuning in to Revolution Radio at revolution.radio and freedomslips.com. Without you, there is no us. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.